Hurricanes and other extreme climate events, i.e. rise in sea levels, tornadoes, are imminent consequences of global warming. Chair recognizes the leader of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hi, my name is Christina, and this is my team member Danielle, and we're arguing that hurricanes and other extreme climate events, a severe rise in sea levels, tornadoes, are imminent consequences of global warming. First off, I would like to discuss a couple of key terms: hurricanes, which are extremely large, powerful, and a destructive storm with very strong winds that occur especially in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. And the key term imminent in this argument means an event that is impending threateningly. The devastating floods, heat records, Hurricane Sandy, and violent tornadoes resulting in high death numbers, melting glaciers, and not to mention drowning polar bears are in the Arctic are all factors in high damages caused by climate change. Observation. Contention 1. Hurricanes can cause catastrophic damage due to climate change. Two essential ingredients in every hurricane are warm water and moist, warm air. How do hurricanes form over the ocean? According to the Global Issues article, warm, moist air from the ocean surface begins to rise rapidly. The water vapor rises into the atmosphere, and as the water vapor rises, it cools and condenses into liquid droplets. Condensation releases heat into the atmosphere, making the air lighter. The warmed air continues to rise with moisture from the ocean taking its place and creating more wind. For example, a pot of water is put on a stove and heated. The heat is what evaporates the water, turning it into water vapor, steam, that gets trapped in the air. The water vapor just above the water in the pot is now hotter than surrounding air, and it rises. The warm tropical atmosphere is just like this stove. It heats up the warm water at the ocean surface and begins to evaporate it. Like the trapped water vapor in the air in the pot, the water from the ocean surface rises through this atmosphere. With that, there is an atmospheric disturbance. The rising air then meets lower pressures and temperatures at higher altitudes, and water vapor begins to condense back into liquid. What does climate change or global warming have to do with this process of hurricane formation? The evaporation of seawater fuels. The power of a hurricane depends on how rapidly water can evaporate from the ocean. When evaporation transfers heat from the ocean to the atmosphere, this converts the transfer of heat into wind energy. Therefore, water evaporation ultimately drives the winds in a hurricane. According to Carrie Emanuel, professor of atmospheric science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the warmer the ocean, the faster water can evaporate from it, prompting the formation of powerful hurricanes. For example, Hurricane Sandy is a stark reminder of the rising risks of climate change. Joe Romm, who obtains a PhD in physics from MIT, stated that we nearly have doubled the chances for a Sandy-type storm surge with just the modest several-inch sea level rise. He has concluded that we face sea level rise of 3 to 6 feet over the next century, with the higher end of the range being more likely to occur. Contention 2. Projections of sea level extremes lead to bigger problems. The IPCC report mentioned that ocean thermal expansion and glacier melting have been the dominant contributors to the 20th century global mean sea level rise. The IPCC also claims that available evidence projects a sustained global warming greater than a certain threshold above pre-industrial would lead to the near-complete loss of the Greenland ice sheet over a millennium or more, causing a global mean sea level rise of about 7 meters. This is enough to submerge London and Los Angeles. NASA also agrees that a stronger greenhouse effect will warm the oceans and partially melt glaciers and other ice, increasing the sea level and expanding the ocean water if it warms, which contributes further to sea level. Our recent Wall Street Journal, published on May 12, 2014, had a group of 2 scientists report that 6 rapidly melting glaciers in Antarctica are destabilizing one of the world's largest ice sheets, a process which could release enough water to raise sea levels worldwide significantly in centuries to come. Researchers from this article reported to NASA that the melting water from the Antarctica glacier could raise sea level by 4 feet, causing patterns of climate change, including rising regional temperatures, warming ocean currents, and changing wind patterns. Contention 4. While some regions are likely to get wetter as the world warms, other regions that are already on the drier side are getting drier. These extremely dry areas are known as droughts. and they are a direct consequence of global warming as they become longer, harder, and more frequent. The Natural Resources Defense Council reports that as part of the country gets drier, the amount of water available and its quality will likely decrease, impacting people's health and food and supplies. This is ultimately a life-harming situation. For example, take a look at California's recent drought records. The National Climatic Data Center states that 77% is now experiencing moderate to exceptional drought conditions, yet it is proven that the record of 77% went up nearly 10% compared to a week ago. Contention 5. El Niño and La Niña play a large part in extreme weather damages around the globe, which is initially caused by climate change. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration describes El Niño and La Niña as opposite phases of what is known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, also known as ENSO cycle. This cycle is a scientific term that describes the fluctuations in temperature between the ocean's atmosphere and the east central equatorial Pacific. La Niña, on the other hand, is referred to as a cold phase of ENSO, and El Niño is the warm phase of ENSO. These deviations can have a large-scale impact not only on ocean processes, but also on global weather and climate. The skeptical environmentalist, for example, mentions that El Niño phenomenon is naturally reoccurring every 3 to 5 years, changing the weather patterns in the southern Pacific, much as the weaker Atlantic oscillation affects the European weather. Essentially, El Niño relaxes or reserves the trade winds, bringing heat and trade winds, bringing in heavy rains to the far western tropical Pacific. El Niño, La Niña has occurred regularly over the last 5,000 years. Therefore, as the shift in ocean currents and winds bring warm water in a westerly direction, displacing the usual cold water that comes up from the ocean depths, these warmer than usual ocean temperatures ultimately cause droughts. Going back to talking about tornadoes, climate change becomes a cause for hurricanes, which in turn leads to severe tornadoes. Paul Epstein, the Associate Director of Global Environment at Harvard Medical School, indicates that warmer temperatures over the land surface create low pressures, hot air rising creating the lows, while cold fronts from the north come with the high pressures, so the weather flows downhill from high to low. Therefore, when water-moist air is wedged under drier, cooler air, the climate instability generates a tornado, creating damaging forces which are capable of causing damages to plants, animals, buildings, and not to mention, the lives of many can be taken away. And I am open for cross-examination.
Okay, thank you so much. Chair will now entertain a cross-examination in front of a podium for a period not to exceed 3 minutes in length.
Hello everyone, my name is Darwin Valentine and I am the leader of the opposition.
Hi. Hi, Darwin.
As she mentioned El Nino, and so I want to talk briefly about that. As a reminder, El Nino is a natural oscillation in the South Pacific Ocean. My first question to you is regarding a quote you stated. El Nino plays a large part in extreme weather damage around the globe, correct?
Yes.
So you're saying that El Nino causes extreme weather.
Don't lean on the podium. Good.
I'm sorry, can you restate that?
So you're saying that El Nino causes extreme weather.
El Nino causes extreme weather, but there's a cause for there's a consequence from El Nino. So something causes El Nino, which is climate change.
But your premise is that global warming leads to extreme weather, which in the first question I asked you, you said yes to El Nino causing extreme weather.
Right, because it's like a cyclical pattern.
So logically, because in your own words, you said El Nino causes extreme weather situations, but you also said it's been naturally occurring for the past 5,000 years.
Correct.
Then so it's safe to say we've had extreme weather for the past 5,000 years, correct?
Yes.
My second point. Greenland example. When I was reading over your brief, you mentioned a few inches of water increasing from over the next 100 years from Greenland melting, correct?
Yes.
In your report, you cited that the IPCC and their prediction for Greenland, which is what I just mentioned. But you mentioned how it would lead to so much destruction, including fish dying. So what you're saying is that inches of water is going to kill fish?
I did not say that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Rest my case.
Okay. Thank you very much. Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hello everyone. My name is Darwin Valentine. I'm the leader of the opposition.
Hi, Darwin.
The topic is once again hurricanes and other extreme weather events are not imminent consequences of global warming. The observation 1 is factual analysis. This proposition is presented as a fact case. Christina already did me the favor of going through the terms, which we both agreed upon beforehand, so I don't feel like I have to mention them again. The criteria for assessing truth will be a preponderance of evidence and quality of evidence in favor of the opposition. And the justification is it provides a fair ground for a brief centered on facts. So my observation 2, or my main argument throughout this piece. It is imperative that the media reconstruct how they approach their coverage of weather, the sensationalism they attribute, and the manipulation of it to fit a story of extreme weather correlated with climate change. An article written, published on October 11, 2013 by Brigitte Norwich from the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom, researched the impact of various typologies of images on the human emotion. Whether you've seen it yourself in the news, seeing floods happening when you see the car up to the top with water. These are the images I'm talking about. The images of extreme weather have become more frequent and more commonplace in media reporting. Between 2000 and 2010, there were at most 700 incidences where a major newspaper covered climate change, with as few as 100 cases in 2001. However, what is the number today? It stands at an impeccable 1,900 stories, as recent as the year 2000, with numbers projected to increase over the next few years, also cited from the same article by Norwich. If that isn't enough, according to the same article in 2004, there were around only 100 where global warming or extreme weather were even mentioned. Then suddenly, there is a spike in 2011, followed by a decline. But the question is, what separates the media's sensationalism from the past 10 years, with the last 70 years, or the past 100 years? If global warming was meant to be imminent then, as it is now, who are we to believe? Follow the track record. The IPCC was released in 2011, and the media decided that it would be important to cover only the floods, only the politicians' response to reports, the hurricanes and droughts, all which were shown in the graph by Norwich in his article. But if the media gets to decide how they will portray the information, then it's imperative we redefine extreme. How do we redefine extreme as the media shows it in poor countries? It makes sense to call it extreme in poor countries when you lack the infrastructure to actually be able to control floods, and therefore you have floods. And that's where the media plays into this argument. My third observation, global warming argument assessment. It is important that we fundamentally understand the argument behind global warming before piecing together how extreme weather fits in the discussion. As stated in 2007 by Professor Philip Scott from the University of London, the correlation between global warming and extreme weather is unfounded, since the latter depends on the former to be true to justify the argument. Logically, if we can prove global warming is not what it has been cut out to be, then does extreme weather, just by definition, in the case of this argument, stand alone in the vacuum? As the argument was undergone in the House of Lords, and it was statistically researched, there was not any statistically significant evidence to support the temperature record when it was compared to the 600,000 years of temperature records we already possess because of ice cores. But the climate has been far hotter than before. We've had the medieval warming period. We've had a cold period that happened in the 14th century. And we've had the Holocene maximum, where we had higher temperatures and higher amounts of CO2. So what is to say that we are causing this extreme weather? Perhaps when we look at extreme weather, it's simply a matter of localized phenomena, rather than an exaggerated, portrayed, systematic approach in the media. But what is the literature of global warming theory? Philip Scott makes this distinction between global climate change and man-induced global warming. He, like other scientists, argued that CO2 cannot be the driver of global climate change. It represents a minuscule element in the atmosphere. And, just through statistics, when CO2 has gone up, temperature has actually gone down. And that's why it's so difficult to actually prove this on paper. A more important point concerns the IPCC. If that is the variable the IPCC model is its extreme weather predictions, then how does the limited gas have a huge impact on our climate system? Observation 4. The illusion of the facts presented by the IPCC. Let it be resolved that we must be aware that the IPCC is seen as a stamp of authority and has served to delegitimize the dissenting scientists involved. Look at the findings. In 2007, the IPCC reported the Himalayas would melt by 2035. The facts have been pulled since then. Suppose the peer review process that it goes through. If these facts were from people, then why are interest groups like the World Wildlife Fund allowed to report statistics that affect their own funding from the government? Professor Patrick Michaels from the University of Virginia, Department of Environmental Sciences, who was part of the IPCC before dropping because he was a dissenting scientist, states how the models actually utilize double the amount of CO2. Leading on to my last point, observation 5. Is this extreme weather a deja vu case? Let us critically look at the track record surrounding extreme weather and its revival within the media over the past 100 years. In the 1970s, there were news stations who started to question whether another little ice age was imminent after seeing local weather patterns shift for a short period. One such article was written in 1970 by the Washington Post. The era of doom news is not new, it's happened in the past, and it's just a recurring theme. The hot era of global climate change is meant to be imminent, something happening tomorrow. So is this just an anomaly, or is this something systematic? So, to summarize it all up, we can underscore it by the media, the IPCC, and independent scientists. For the purposes of this brief, the focus was on the facts concerning extreme weather, including but not limited to the sensationalism in the media, the perceived mechanism that drives global warming, the IPCC report, the historical record of climate, and its contradictory media attention. For these reasons, I believe hurricanes and other extreme weather events are not imminent consequences of global warming. And that's that open to cross-examination.
Thank you very much. Chair will now recognize the cross-examination in front of the podium, not to exceed 3 minutes in length.
My phone's dying. So.
Do you have a phone you can borrow? At the moment we have technical difficulty. Okay.
Okay, so just to clarify, one of your points, you argue that sensationalism in the media is portraying these extreme weather events in a very exaggerated and dramatized way. Am I right? Did you state that?
In an article written by narration.
Madison, can you slide over this way a little bit?
He was researching how the media was portraying it, and he showed it statistically through researching over 100 articles that represented really this sensationalism I'm talking about.
And one of your points in your brief and in your argument were that media is exaggerating these extreme weather events.
Not necessarily exaggeration, but the fact that they're showing weather events that maybe in countries that lack infrastructure, by definition will show an exaggeration, as opposed to actually trying to go out of their way to find pictures that are not fitting to the story.
So how is this related to our topic that we're arguing today?
Because when you look at the way in which society runs, it's really the information mainstream to get public support and funding really has to go through the media. And I'd say media not just in the sense of like Fox News and CNN, but the media in terms of everybody who's involved in information and being able to relay that information from person to person. And that's why I center my argument around media sensationalism, because a lot of the facts that scientists use and a lot of the images that they use really helps them get more funding for something that's really gained funding for the last 10 years.
Okay, so you also mentioned that in 2001, major newspapers covered climate change with less than 100 cases. Yet in 2011, the stories projected to 1900. Was this right?
Correct.
Okay. But my question for you would be, do you have any statistical numbers on how many stories were covered right after the Hurricane Sandy in 2005?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just a question about your bibliography, your works cited page on your brief. I noticed that your first source, you cited Willis Eisenbach. Is this correct?
Who is, which page?
It's your works cited page, your number 1 source.
Yeah.
You don't have an author listed, so I was curious who you cited.
I think it was from the Associated Press, and it was from the actual editing editorial, like the full board.
Okay, so I actually looked it up, and it's by Willis Eisenbach, and we did some research, and we found out that he is not a scientist, he is actually a psychologist, so I don't see how he could actually critique this case in any way, if he doesn't have the background to do it.
But you cited Bajong Lomberg, who also isn't in this discussion as well.
I cited...
Lomberg is also not an authority figure within the science community.
Okay, so, and then your 4th source, it's the Great American Swindle, and can you verify what year that was published?
I believe the movie date was 2007.
Okay, and do you have any background information on the author, or June Noggle, I think it is?
Okay, answer this last question. and
Not
that's
from
time.
whatever I've read on the summary of who was involved with the process of the video.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Madison, can you slide over a little bit more?
He's a little...
I know it's close, and
He's pointing to you.
yeah, you're blocking my camera angle. Yeah, thank you. That's better. Yeah, you can be cozy. That's better. Thank you. Okay, Chair recognizes the member of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hi everybody, I'm Danielle, and I'm the
Hi,
member of the government.
Danielle.
Hey. Okay, so as Darwin and Christina both said, we already went over the terms. I just want to add one really quick that was also agreed upon. Tropical storms, if I say that, that's referring to hurricanes and or monsoons. If I say tropical cyclone, that's a hurricane. Okay. Also wanted to illustrate the consequences. It says, are imminent consequences of global warming. Consequences are something that happens as a result of something else, right? All agree there? Alright, so our thesis is that hurricanes and other extreme climate events are imminent consequences of global warming, and it's due to some simple facts. Sea levels are rising, intensities of hurricanes and storms are rising, and number of hurricanes and other storms are also rising. This is all related to and resulted from the increase in global temperature. Contention 1 is exactly the same as Christina's. The warm, humid air is increasing. This creates a higher likelihood of hurricane, monsoon, and tornado activity. According to an article in National Geographic, the Earth's oceans growing warmer, they're evaporating moisture into the atmosphere, and it's about 4% more to this day since 1970. That article was written in 2012. According to Gerald Neal, a senior scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, by adding just a little bit more carbon dioxide to the climate, it makes things a little bit warmer and shifts the odds towards these more extreme events. He said what was once a rare event will now become less rare. And I don't know if anybody wants to live in a world where hurricanes are common. Or tornadoes, for that matter. The IPCC 2001 report stated that there was an increase in precipitation and in heavy extreme precipitation. And furthermore, the IPCC stated that in general the evidence is uncertain in regards to the increases in storm intensity. So they could say that there hasn't been any storm intensity, but IPCC even states that it's uncertain, and it also says that these issues are still unresolved, and that there is in fact evidence that shows changes in the frequency of tropical cyclones in relation to storm intensity. Rainfall-induced inland flooding and storm surge are the leading causes of damage, as they were talking about in relation to media, which are both results of increase in temperature for the exact processes and reason that Christina explained earlier. In late April of 2014, that's just a couple weeks ago, record-breaking rains across the Gulf Coast caused significant flash flooding. Pensacola, Florida received over 20 inches of rain. It's like record-breaking. Also, 2 weeks ago in April, 38 tornadoes across the Midwest in the United States. It was record-breaking. It happened during April 27th through 29th, 2 weeks ago, this year. There was at least 33 fatalities reported. That's from the NOAA, which is the National Organization for Atmospheric Pressure. Okay. Therefore, the increase in global temperatures leads to increase in humidity, and you can see that pretty much clear across the board with the facts. Condition 2, the increasing ocean and land temperatures resulting from the warming atmosphere will lead to large numbers of heavy precipitation events and significantly greater intensity of tropical storms. It's a fact that tropical cyclones form only over warm water, which they gain their energy, largely from the latent heat of condensation, as we clearly explained earlier. Over the time, the climate will warm and thus moisten. That increased moisture will lead to increased tropical cyclone rainfall. This is according to the American Meteorological Society Journal from 2006. The causal link between sea surface temperature and hurricane intensity was established over 50 years ago, and was observed when it was observed that tropical cyclones do not form unless the underlying surface sea temperature exceeds 26.5 degrees. In addition, warm sea temperatures are needed to provide the energy to support the development of hurricane winds. According to the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society Journal, this indicates a strong relationship between ocean thermal energy and maximum potential energy that can be released. By isolating the trends of surface sea temperature from shorter modes of variability, scientists were able to conclude that the global increase in Category 4 and 5 hurricanes, which is the highest they can be, for the period from 1970 to 2004, was directly linked to sea surface temperature. So this increase in land and sea surface temperature is causing direct impacts as seen by these scientists in these scientific journals. The global monsoon is likely to strengthen in the 21st century, according to the IPCC report from 2013. What happens with monsoons is the global hydrologic cycle intensifies and strengthens with warming. It's shown in models, but it's also shown in examples and observations of all monsoons that have happened since they started reporting them. There's also the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory that's located at Princeton, and they basically have a hurricane prediction system. It's become extremely more accurate, especially within the last 10 years. The model is able to reproduce important features of hurricanes, including the inflow of low-level air, moist air that feeds into thunderstorms, among many others. Some scientists have concluded that it's premature to attribute intensified hurricane activity to global warming. However, it seems that these scientists are jettisoning this theory rather prematurely. Simulated hurricanes increase intensity in a warmer climate. That's just the bottom line. That's a fact. If we look at Hurricane Katrina, the inability to draw a 100% definite conclusion in no sense justifies the conclusion that global warming did not influence Katrina. For the same reason he was asking Christina about El Nino and its effects. El Nino might be a natural occurring thing, but it's worsened by global warming, and that's directly what we're arguing here today. The next contention, increasing global temperatures are causing sea levels to rise, which contributes to extreme climate events. Christina touched on the sea level, so I don't have to go into it with too much depth, I hope, but I just want to point out some pretty interesting facts. According to the 2013 IPCC report, it's likely that the rate of global mean sea level in the 21st century will exceed the rate observed from 1971 to 2010, due to increases in ocean warming and a loss of mass from glaciers and ice sheets. That's quoted from the IPCC. Two major causes of global sea level rise are thermal expansion caused by the warming of the oceans, since water expands as it warms. And the loss of land-based ice, such as glaciers and polar ice caps, are due to increased melting. Melting ice is actually now becoming the leading cause of rising sea levels. It's not so much the water is getting warm in the ocean and the water is expanding, which is what a lot of other scientists might try to argue. Melting ice, according to the IPCC, is becoming the leading cause of rising sea levels. This could affect many Americans in particular because most Americans live in coastal states or cities. In a report reported on in The Guardian, also deriving from the IPCC, that's time. So sea level increases are an imminent consequence of global warming as well. I now stand open for cross-examination.
Thank you so much. Chair now recognizes a cross-examination period in front of the podium for a period not to exceed 3 minutes.
I'm a member of the opposition, so I just have a few questions for you. So you obviously talked about the tornadoes last week that occurred. So tornadoes, like hurricanes, have a severity rating, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we can all agree that not all tornadoes are created equal then, because there's a rating system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so you would consider F5 tornadoes to be extreme, since we're talking about extreme weather events.
Yes.
Okay. Were any of the tornadoes from last week the F5 tornadoes?
No.
Okay. Just good to know. Okay, so you also discussed the number of other storms increasing.
Correct.
Okay, and then so that includes obviously tornadoes, because you said that tornadoes are going to become more common, correct? Okay. And then you
Face
said...
the audience, please.
Oh, sorry. You said that glaciers and ice melting are what are leading to rising sea levels.
Correct.
Okay.
They're leading causes.
And so you would probably expect then Greenland and Antarctica to be two main contributors to this melting.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
Especially if they're large masses of land, then they wouldn't be expected to.
Okay, what other areas then?
I would say that smaller ice cap areas and glaciers, and I think that's what we're seeing disappearing.
Okay, and then so where would you see the sea levels being affected? Like small islands?
It'll be affected as time goes on. I mean, the idea is that global warming, the Earth's warming right now, and the warmer
But
it
where
gets,
would
the more melting
the,
would happen.
well, we've talked about like the photos of cities being covered, so it'd be islands and things like that that are smaller probably. that
Or
are
coastal
being-
cities. Yeah.
Okay, coastal cities, okay, awesome. Okay, and then,
We all live in one.
okay, then you said that flooding is leading cause of damage going on right now.
Yeah, inland flooding.
Okay, and then is this because of infrastructure or because of the actual intensity of this flooding?
Well, I think you can have all the infrastructure you want on your coastal city, and if a storm surge or rainfall-induced flooding happens,
Okay,
I mean, you're flooded. So your infrastructure, no matter how nice it is.
okay, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Chair will now hear from the member of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Okay. Hello, my name is Madison, and I am a
Hi, Madison.
I am a member of the opposition. So we are obviously talking about hurricane and other extreme weather events and how they're not actually imminent causes of global warming. Our criteria is a preponderance of evidence, as my partner Darwin has discussed. And so the first thing I'm going to be discussing is the IPCC reports that they have discussed quite a bit. So there's a lot of flaws with these reports. They're based off of models that are inaccurate, and these reports actually lack expert in a lot of the topics that they're covering. In 2013, Dr. Michaels, the director of the Cattau Institute Center for the Study of Science, stated that since 2011, there have been 18 different experiments that show that the IPCC climate models are off by 46% when it comes to temperature CO2 sensitivity. The IPCC has been showing sea levels rising by 2.3 millimeters a year. But until 2003, their own satellite-based evidence showed no upward trend of sea levels. The graph illustrating this global sea level trend going upward was actually solely based off of a single tide gauge in Hong Kong Harbor showing this 2.3 millimeter rise. This graph is changed by a corrective factor of 2.3 millimeters because the IPCC scientists admitted they needed to show a trend. Let's just keep that in mind. Dr. Morner, the former chairman of the INQUA International Commission on Sea Level Change, was asked to be an expert reviewer of some of these IPCC recent reports. And he decided to ask them about some of the scientists that they have had contributing as authors to the sea level aspect. And he asked, and he found out that none of them were actually sea level specialists. I thought that was interesting. Some of the listed contributors on this report actually were dissenting scientists who do not believe there is a correlation between global warming and extreme weather events, but their research was not included in the report. Unlike the predictions made by the IPCC and Al Gore in An Inconvenient Truth, sea levels are not increasing, and they haven't for the last 50 years. Al Gore has predicted sea levels rising 20 feet and showed very dramatic photos of cities underwater in his movie in an attempt to heighten this urgency around this issue. But both of these are feeding into the media frenzy that have been discussed by my partner. Dr. Morner states that the sea level rising is one of the greatest lies that's ever been told. As a scientist who's been studying sea levels all over the globe for the past 35 years, he has found that even though there have been fluctuations down as well as up, the sea level is not rising, and it hasn't for the past 50 years. Part of what makes his predictions more reliable than what was discussed by Al Gore is that Al Gore's predictions are based on unreliable computer predictions, while his are actually based off of going into the field and observing what is happening in the real world. Some examples of his research is in Maldives, a small island that the political leaders have been saying for the past 20 years they need international aid to avoid disaster from sea level rising. He went there 6 times with his expert team, and they found that the sea level had actually not risen in Maldives for half a century, but the government refused to let him show his findings. Another example of exaggeration with sea levels is seen in Tuvalu, where political leaders have been telling their citizens for years that the island should be evacuated. But Dr. Morner's research actually showed that the sea level there has been decreasing in recent decades. now I'm going to talk about tornadoes. As the United States is where most tornadoes occur, my evidence will be focused on that area of the world. There is a rating system of intensity of tornadoes known as the Ucla scale. It is based primarily on the damage tornadoes inflict on man-made structures and vegetation. An F5 is the most severe and sometimes can cause billions of damage to cities. Because tornadoes are based on intensity, but measured on the damage they inflict, then it logically makes sense that the best recorded tornadoes are F5 tornadoes. However, if extreme weather events are an imminent issue, you would then expect there to be a recent increase in the number of tornadoes, especially those that are rated F5. Dr. Pike, a senior research scientist at the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Science, stated before the House of Representatives in 2013 that within the United States, tornadoes have not increased in frequency or intensity since at least 1950. He went further to state that there's even some evidence that they've been on decline. An example of this decline is seen with F5 tornadoes. There was only one reported from 2000 to 2007, but there were 6 from 1992 to 1999. So that's obviously a decrease in F5 tornadoes. My third point is that infrastructure is actually what will help with these extreme weather events. And if there was proper infrastructure, they wouldn't actually be considered extreme because it's solely based off of the damage that they're incurring. As we have argued, the media correlates extreme weather events to global warming in order to garner audience attention. Instead, the focus should be shifted to providing developing countries with the funds for proper infrastructure. With the proper infrastructure and added safety, these reoccurring events would not actually be extreme or harmful. The damage caused by Hurricane Katrina, which I'm sure all of you have seen on TV, was not just a result of the magnitude of the storm, but actually because of structural issues with levees that broke and weak points in the flood protection systems. Another example of where infrastructure should have been strengthened was seen recently with the typhoon that occurred in the Philippines. I'm not sure you've all seen the photos, but one of my friends actually lives in the Philippines and her house was completely underwater. But the reason why the infrastructure was not properly put in place in the Philippines is because from 2009 to 2010, a businesswoman named Janet Naples has laundered over $200 million that was meant to pay for infrastructure for the Philippines. If that money had actually been put in place to create the infrastructure and developmental works, this damage could have been prevented. To give you an idea of the lack of infrastructure that is actually currently in the Philippines, so the help they actually need, they actually have the lowest percentage of paved roads when compared with the neighboring countries. Another issue that they have is fixed phone lines and households with low power and electricity. If these areas had the proper infrastructure, these weather events would cause little if any damage. The cost for these protections are less than the cost to repair the damage caused by these events, so it only benefits nations to help other developing nations along with themselves to make sure they have protection. Lomberg stated in his book, The Skeptical Environmentalist, that Poland, which is considered to be at risk of flooding, would have to spend 28 to 46 billion if they did not pay for protections against flooding. But it would only cost them 2.3 billion for structural protection if the flooding actually occurred. So, now I stand open to cross-examination.
Thank you very much. Cross-examination, not to exceed 3 minutes in length.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
All right, so would you agree that we're having a fact debate today?
Yes.
Do you think infrastructure is related to policy or fact?
I think it's related to both because there are the facts of the matter that there are countries that are not quite as developed as we are, and even
Persuade
within,
us.
even within our own country, the levees example with Hurricane Katrina were not properly supported, and if they had been, that wouldn't have been as much of an issue.
Okay, so which would it be more? Would infrastructure relate more to policy or fact?
I think it's both.
Okay. You said that the IPC has been showing sea levels rising 2.3 millimeters a year, but until 2003, their satellite-based evidence showed no upward trend. Do you think that had anything to do with the technology increase and the technology becoming more sophisticated and thus more accurate?
No, I think I actually discussed the 2.3, they adjusted it based off of one specific area. Part of the problem is they're treating a global issue based off of local facts, and they should actually stop doing that because that's why their models are so inaccurate.
Okay. In the model you were referring to, you said that they used a corrective factor, but is that not a typical thing when people are making graphs to show that there actually is a trend?
It's only in one specific area in this very small part of Hong Kong, so no, it's not a global issue.
All these sources here with the IPC, you cited Telegraph 2009, but I don't see it in your works cited. Do you know what it's referring to?
It wasn't works cited, but it was just referring to an article that when I was referring to think it was Dr. Morner, yeah. That was all where his quotes came from.
Okay. Al Gore, you mentioned him a lot. Do you think that his documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, was credible?
No.
Do you think that anyone in this class really thinks there's a whole lot of credibility left in it based on what we've talked about so far?
It depends. I think that he exaggerated, and that's part of the issue.
So it would be fair to say that most people don't find his documentary very substantial in fact-wise.
I'm not going to speak for them, but I don't.
Okay. Yeah. I need to reference him. I see that you mentioned only on tornadoes, and your focus was because those are only found in the United States, or that's the main thing found in the United States.
No, tornadoes, when they occur, it's mostly within the United States and Europe, so that's why I focused on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said that there's only one F5 tornado reported from 2000 to 2007. Do you have any data on how many tornadoes total have been reported?
No.
Okay. Also, do you think the infrastructure is relevant to a fact debate
Yes.
on whether or not hurricanes and extreme weather events are increasing? Does that have to do with infrastructure?
Well, we're talking about extreme and whether they're eminent, and they're not an eminent issue if we have the proper infrastructure, because they're not going to be as severe as people think they are.
Okay. And then can you
Because they're
just,
naturally occurring events.
right.
Yes.
Can you just go over how many sources did you cite for this?
I don't have my full list. I had like 12. I redid my work site, sorry.
Okay, so the last updated list I have, you have 9, but 2 are dictionaries, so 7. And is that correct?
My new
You have an
list is,
updated one?
yeah.
You have an updated one.
50.
But that's from what I have.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. It's now time for refutation. 4-step refutation. Yes. Thank you. Chair recognizes the leader of the government for a period of rebuttal not to exceed 4 minutes in length. Danielle, can you slide over to that way a little bit? Yeah, thank you. Good. Very good.
Hi, my name is Christina.
Hi,
So
Christina.
I would like to focus on one of the main points that my opponents raised in their argument, and this is about their statements on media. They say that media sensationalism reconstructs how they approach their coverage of weather, and the media gets to decide how to portray the information of extreme climate events. We disagree with these points because the purpose of the media is to raise awareness and seek for an effective action. Yet when my opponents say that media dramatizes and sensationalizes climate change and weather events, it is almost similar to the following analogy. If someone told you that crossing a particular road carried a 99% chance of being killed, you would almost likely not cross the road, right? So this remaining uncertainty in respects on climate change is no reason to avoid taking action and raising awareness that huge and large weather events are soon on their way, especially when the action required brings so many other benefits with it. Certain media sources do present viewers with situations that are actually happening. The fact that they are exaggerating their findings does not disprove the fact that these events are not happening or have not happened. The viewers of these media need to understand the facts behind each extreme weather event, including the various factors, such as what damages they cause to mankind physically, emotionally, and financially. The media should not be an aspect that falters the extreme climate events, because there is a bigger problem here, one that can destroy our lives in the future, but one that can destroy the lives of our future and the lives of our future generations. Therefore, my argument shows that extreme weather events, including hurricanes, sea level rises, tornadoes, droughts, and El Niño, La Niña, are imminent consequences of global warming. Our evidence research, including the IPCC reports, the skeptical environmentalists, the Wall Street Journal, and other various reliable sources, prove that hurricanes can become much worse and result in severe damages if the Earth continues to warm. My opponents also said that since 2005, we have not seen any crazy hurricane seasons. We disagree with this broad fact because, although we are currently not experiencing recent records of any current hurricanes, this is not due to the fact that the Earth has stopped warming temperatures or ceased the sea level rise. Rather, when we do experience a recent hurricane, it will be more damaging, it will be more severe than one we had ever had. Climate changes due to global warming are constantly causing damages to the Earth. Oftentimes, they are not directly visible to the human eye through globally damaging weather events. Yet the problems and consequences of global warming are building up to create a disaster that skyrockets recent records. Hurricane records to our current date have proven that they have gotten only stronger and increasingly damaging through the recent years, such as Hurricane Sandy, when it broke the records of being the strongest and most damaging hurricane. Therefore, it is not, however, false that currently we are experiencing extreme meltings of glaciers in Antarctica. This is in fact causing sea levels to rise worldwide, which ultimately creates developing problems for the future. These future predictions that scientists declare could happen today, tomorrow, next month, or even many years from now, hence the key term imminent in our main argument. But the result will be dramatically huge compared to the past.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Yeah, more like it. Yeah. Okay, Chair now recognizes the Prime Minister of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 4 minutes in length, a rebuttal. Thank you. Using the 4 steps of
Thank
refutation.
you, everyone. My name is Darwin Valentine again. I'm the
Hi,
Prime
Darwin.
Minister
Hi,
for
Darwin.
the Oppositional group. The first point I'd like to mention is that schools are meant for the information to be taken from one person to another person to teach others about different topics. The media is intended to actually be a private company, focus on profit, focus on media attention, so that they're able to get the money that comes from the channels and the different stories that they put on these channels. But this is aside from the point. My first point is on media sensationalism. They said that devastating floods, heat records, the death numbers from tornadoes are all factors that cause climate change. But we disagree because the media sensationalism is to blame for the heavy bias in the presentation of these events. For instance, in devastating floods, they've shown different countries that lack infrastructure, as both myself and my partner have said before, that show cars inundated with so much water that you cannot see the roof of the car. But these are pictures that they've used just to be able to perpetuate this ideology. In the article by Norwich, he also stated that in order to connect these events from other countries with Americans, why not show an American being in the tsunami in Taiwan or the Philippines, and show them being inundated by water as well, so that it can be pictured by the media as happening closer to home. Therefore, we believe, based on looking at Norwich's article and based on several other examples I mentioned in my arguments, it is inconclusive to their factual claims to believe that the media is just out there to share information rather to raise profit and help their shareholders. I'd like to raise another point on polar bears. They said there were drowning polar bears, which they also said that Al Gore was not a credible source. We disagree because it is an unlinked claim. The British court system challenged this point when it was mentioned in The Inconvenient Truth. Therefore, we believe this claim should not be considered. It was thrown out of the courtroom for not being systematically linked to the global climate issue, and more importantly, the extreme weather connection with global warming. Another point is on hurricanes. They said that Michael Oppenheimer from Princeton University said that hurricanes are amplified by climate change, specifically global warming. We disagree because the facts are not completely provided. In the Associated Press article written in 2012 after Hurricane Sandy by Seth Bernstein, there was a quote that connected not only Oppenheimer, but also with his colleagues from Princeton University within his own department, that said they cannot conclusively link a single storm to global warming. And any connection is not clear and simple as environmental activists might contend. Therefore, we believe this is also inconclusive to their factual claims. My last point is on thermal expansion. They say that the IPCC report on the ocean thermal expansion and glacier melting have been the dominant contributors to the 20th century mean sea level rise. Thermal expansion, as I mentioned before, takes a considerable amount of time. Picture the hundreds of gallons, the miles of depth in the ocean through which the heat has to transfer through. That, logically and scientifically, takes forever to respond and can happen upwards of 1,000 years before. Take this metaphor as my last point. Picture dropping a few ice cubes in a pool. Measure the change, measure the thermal expansion, and tell me when you apply that to a larger scale system, whether it still applies. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes a member of the government for a rebuttal, not to exceed 4 minutes in length, using the 4 steps of refutation.
everybody, I'm Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
Okay, so they said that sea levels are not rising, and that there are reports that don't have sea level experts reporting on this. We disagree because according to an article in The Guardian that was approved by the IPCC in a way to review the mistakes, 90 expert judgments from 18 countries gave their responses on what they think sea level increases will see over the next couple of years. The results were that they found they grossly underestimated sea level rising. And the IPCC agreed that, yeah, they were grossly underestimated. So we disagree with that point. Furthermore, they say that infrastructure is germane to this debate and also proves that hurricanes and other extreme climate events are not imminent consequences of global warming itself. We disagree because I don't think that infrastructure is going to be related at all to what's going on in the environment. And we're talking about global warming, we're talking about temperatures rising, we're talking about hurricanes increasing due to this temperature rise. It's pretty simple to follow. Most of their articles cited are about infrastructure. There's one here on the Philippines. It says, Philippines pork barrel graph growth has lawmaker squealing. Sounds like a policy issue. This other one is, I think, their most credible source. It's by Dr. Gilk. And while he stated a lot of really interesting facts, he also states in this article that they cited that humans influence the climate system in profound ways, including through the emission of carbon dioxide. Researchers have detected in some cases and attributed a human influence in other measures of climate events beyond those discussed in testimony, including surface temperatures and some measures of precipitation. So he's even agreeing that temperatures on surfaces are rising, which we know can lead to an increase in water vapor, hurricanes, and that precipitation is increasing, which can lead to heavier monsoon season, which has also been seen. So I disagree on the lack of evidence and credibility. Furthermore, I know that Christina touched on this. One of the sources came from an author who has been completely discredited, is not a scientist, not an engineer, he's a psychology graduate who does guest posts on the website that he cited. Another source was the LA Times, but the article they cited was actually in favor of the government side. It's called Getting Global Warming Right. It says that there was a controversial claim that 40% of the Amazon rainforest could react drastically to even slight reduction in precipitation. They found that to be untrue. The article quoted says, although the IPCC errors have cast some light on the problems that arise when policymakers demand hard numbers, they have done nothing to shake bedrock conclusions that the world is warming and greenhouse gases generated by humans are the cause. Waging a calculated misinformation campaign, seizing on every error gap in scientific knowledge to cast doubt or research findings and portray scientists as villains. This is from their source, not mine. So we disagree there. Also, on sea level rising, they claim that there's not been any change, that glaciers aren't melting. Darwin says that it will take forever for them to melt. Okay. And we disagree because the sea level experts have found that sea level has been steadily rising at a rate of 0.04 to 0.1 inches per year since 1900. Since 1992, new methods of satellite altimetry, as I mentioned to Addison earlier, is that the technology has advanced, and therefore it's a lot easier to measure these things. And that's why when they're saying, well, there's not a lot of old research on this, it's because it is now developed and now it's creating more accurate responses. As we saw with the measurement system that Princeton has for hurricane measuring is seeing like in the 90% of accuracy in predicting hurricanes, including Hurricane Katrina. They predicted it 3 days in advance, and we all know that because no one evacuated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now hear a 4-minute rebuttal from the member of the opposition.
Hi, my name is Madison.
Hi, Madison.
So they say that the melting ice is becoming the leading cause of sea level rising, and she actually specifically used Antarctica as her example. I disagree. I have shown that global sea levels are actually not rising, and it's a very localized issue. And with Antarctica as an example, if you look at Lomberg, which they actually did cite in their work, sea levels from Antarctica, if they are increased, is going to be only by a few inches, which I doubt is going to have the sort of effect that they've talked about with fish dying and habitats being completely demolished. They also said that infrastructure is not related to this debate, but I disagree because one of our definitions is whether these weather events are extreme. They're naturally occurring, whether or not global warming is existing right now. And part of the extreme nature of these events is being defined by the damage they cause. If you look at the way tornadoes are defined and the severities created is because of the damage they're creating, and that is completely related to infrastructure. If the infrastructure was there, this damage wouldn't be occurring and these tornadoes wouldn't be ranked F5 tornadoes, which we haven't even had recently. Even within the 38 tornadoes that occurred last week, she even defined F5 tornadoes as extreme and went on to say that none of those happened last week. And furthermore, she also discussed the credibility of some of our research, but I showed that the IPC actually isn't credible at the moment with some of the things that they use, and that she said that the models have possibly changed recently, but the article I cited was from 2013, and he was referring back to 2011. I don't think that there's been that much change in the technology within the past 2 years. And to be off by 46%, if we're talking about graphs and data, is quite a bit. So therefore, I disagree that our research is not credible because of the models changing recently. They also said that El Nino is playing a large part in extreme weather damages, and that is caused by climate change. And then they also go on to say that El Nino has been naturally occurring for the last 5,000 years. So this shows that El Nino is occurring naturally, like a lot of these events that we're talking about, and is not actually a result of global warming. Therefore, it's not an extreme weather event that is correlated to global warming, which is our whole topic's focus on, is whether these two things are correlated. I don't think that they have shown that there is a correlation. If we're going to be completely honest, I think that a lot of these events that we're talking about are naturally occurring, and like we've discussed, the media is making them seem more extreme than they actually are. They would occur with or without global warming. So that is it.
Okay, let's give them all a round of applause. Now time to study your notes individually. Look over your notes of the debate and come to an individual decision.
Thank you.
And I need to know what.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. Big file. You need a what? No. No.
What can I abstain from voting?
No, but what I would say is if you have a reasonable doubt, then you know what to do with that.
This is very cool.
It's the same with what you do in a courtroom when you have a reasonable doubt. Thank you. You dated it on Excel file? Yeah.
What?
Darren, that was smart.
Oh. No, his wife's choice was on it. No, because I remember being creative in last quarter. I was like, oh, I remember this. Well, I mean, it's 200 person class. Kind of easy to. Oh.
Okay, can I have the ballots, please?
I was only called.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you. And thank you to the chair for better rebuttals. Yeah, better. Still not getting it.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have all the ballots? No. One more? One more? Yeah, that was good.
Great strategy on their part.
They're all like they're all arguing our fault. The war is happening that they all were saying it's like because of that. So that was just an assumption like it's necessarily true. So generally like if you're saying that Elton Yoda is a lot, but Elton isn't happening.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
have all those articles.
I don't know about my policy, but for green states that
okay.
so we're agreeing. Well, like if there's no way that we can focus on like the policy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But you brought up green states.
All those like questions, like you're all just like okay, that's yeah, I mean,
If they have like such a great policy and I have no idea about, I would tackle that.
yeah, nice.
I know you would. I would get your
Yeah.
Do I have all the ballots? Okay.
Okay, yeah. I was the secretary. So yeah, I still like the conflict. Oh, I was, yeah. I was like,
So I feel like I should get back.
Yeah.
that's interesting now that you do that. It's very different. And all the weird formalities. Yeah, I went to a few debates back in high school, like the fast hockey ones.
Okay. It's time to announce the results on a fairly close decision, but not as close as the last two decisions. The results were 13-10 for the proposition that hurricanes and other extreme climate events, rise in sea levels, tornadoes, are imminent consequences of global warming. Congratulations. Apparently, Nick has a medical emergency and he has to leave early. So we'll start with Nick and on this side.
Sorry. All right. Okay, so I voted proposition, and there was a couple reasons, and I was like writing these down because I always forget once I'm up here. So first of all, for critiques, I didn't really have any critiques for anyone. I thought everyone spoke really well. Everyone was confident. I applaud everyone. Darwin, I thought that everything you said, like I understood. So I thought especially for you, really good speaking, just coming from everyone. Okay, so I voted government for 3 different reasons. The first one was preponderance of evidence. When you have preponderance of evidence, you guys just gave more evidence, right? That I guess was kind of substantial. Number 2 were the definitions were already agreed upon. So when you talk about extreme, that's just something that I agree with you that plays into it. But I think that was something in the definitions, and everyone, because we're supposed to agree on the definitions now. Yeah, it was a definitional issue, which in actual debate is something that actually happens quite frequently, and I think that would have been actually a really good debate. Okay, and the third one is this debate was very, very hard for the opposition. It's very hard for you to win this. Very hard. And there's a couple reasons. It's because you have to solve for every single weather pattern. You have to solve for hurricanes, you have to solve for flooding, you have to solve for tornadoes. And they listed 5 different weather patterns. And you guys, I think, beat them on tornadoes, and I think you beat them on flooding. On flooding. I like the drop in the bucket with the icebergs into the ocean. But the thing is, you can't solve for all 5. And they still fulfill the resolution if you guys give me 3 more, like hurricanes, which I didn't really hear much from you. So that's kind of where my decision comes. But overall, I think it was really good. And under the circumstances, I thought you guys did an excellent job. So great job on both sides.
Okay, thank you. Let me, good. Let me just start by, just add to that they used for this, that both agreed on the preponderance of evidence, and so that was the standard that both sides agreed on. And we noticed that we did have some back and forth on the preponderance of evidence, the quality of the evidence, and that sort of thing. So that was an issue here. The second thing I would say is, remember, they had 5 areas that they looked into, but they also took on a bigger burden by having those 5 areas as well. And if you created a doubt in those 5 areas, you could still prevail. Patil, let's go to you now.
Hi everyone, I'm Patil.
Hi, Patil.
So, unfortunately, I walked in late, so I could not, I wasn't able to listen to your brief fully, Christine. But I thought your rebuttal was great.
It was brilliant.
It really was. It truly was. Daniel, I think you did a great job when you pointed out that infrastructure can be a policy issue rather than a fact. Darwin, you had a great cross-examination, and you paced yourself very well, so it was easy to follow. Madison, again, great rebuttal. I loved it. The reason I did grind on here to the opposition, though, is because I thought that you were able to show that sea levels were not necessarily rising dramatically, and although there might have been a definitional issue with the word extreme, I thought you were able to demonstrate that extreme is defined by the damage caused by infrastructure as well. And also I thought you were able to demonstrate that El Nino is not necessarily it's mainly natural equilibrium, not necessarily caused by global warming. So
Right.
there we go.
And the affirmative evidence said that. Yes, please.
I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit, so it sounds.
Okay, well, man up and tell us your decision.
Appreciate your sympathy, Professor Miller. I voted, my name's Thomas. I voted for the government side. Just first off, I want to say everyone was very well poised, composed. You guys all spoke very well. Even toned. It was good. The reason I voted for the government side was I thought turning around their evidence or going into their sources, attacking their sources was a really good idea. I thought that was a really good move on your part. That was a big part that stood out to me. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. I do think, and in law and in courts, when you do discovery, that's one of the reasons you do discovery is you check on the other side's evidence and witnesses and their credibility, and you find out whether they're a psychiatrist or a psychologist and what they're up to and what they're saying. And the government did their homework today, didn't they? Yes, please.
Okay, hey, I'm Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
Everybody did an awesome job. Especially Darwin, you did a really good job presenting yours because it was almost like a narrative and it was very easy to follow and you had a really good structure. Everybody did their research. I like how you used their own source against them. That was pretty brilliant.